everyday witches emerge from the shadows of secrecy. Broom closets are flinging open and witches are taking flight. Whether you are hiding in your cozy closet or flying with pride, stay for a spell as Witchcasting with Theodora Pendragon and her guests share magical moments, stir the cauldron, and debunk misinformation and misconceptions about paganism, witches, and our wonderful world of magic.
Hello, everyone. My special guest today is Lisa Campion, and I will let her introduce herself because she has a long list of credentials. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be on your podcast. I'm super happy to be here today. I'm a psychic, and I've been working as a psychic since I was 19 years old. It's like a really long time ago now. I also am an author, Reiki master teacher, and these days my thing is about helping psychics, healers, and empaths really understand what their gifts are and fully train their gifts. Because I think the world needs all the healers it can get. And my mission in life is to create an army of healers to go out there and save the world. And that's what the world needs saving right about now. And that's my contribution.
That's a fabulous goal.
Yeah.
What's the difference between intuition and psychic abilities? I'm sure you would have a really good explanation of that.
Yeah, and I define it in a very, I'm sure everyone has their own definitions, but my definition is that intuition is really our inner knowing, like our sense of like what we feel in our body, what we know, in our gut, and what our emotions are telling us. Like if you know anything about the chakras, those are the first three chakras, but we are constantly receiving information. And I feel like it comes from our ability to sense what's happening around us. I actually love the old-fashioned term ESP, extrasensory perception, because I feel like as sensitives, we process more of the sensory data that we're getting all around us, maybe more than other people do. So we just have higher levels of perception about what's actually happening. So intuition is like your ability to tune into reality as it's unfolding around you, with a higher degree of awareness than other people. That's sort of my definition of intuition. So it's our inner knowing, coming from ourself. Psychic is really the ability to catch information from something that's outside of ourselves. Well, what does that mean? That's your angels, your spirit guides, dead Uncle Fred, your old granny who's hanging around you, helping you. We all have a team of spiritual beings that are with us, assisting us. And psychic is our ability to receive information from outside of ourselves. At least that's my definitions of it.
A good way to think about that and remember is intuition is inside and psychic abilities is information coming from the outside.
That's right. Yeah.
Is everyone psychic or only special people given this ability?
I think everyone is. I don't think we would have made it. We wouldn't have evolved as humans. We wouldn't have made it in our evolution if we didn't have this. I do feel like it's an ability, like musical ability, like athletic ability. We all have some. Some people have more than others. And I feel like that's connected to our life purpose. Like it's related to what we're supposed to do with it. But like any ability, it can increase if you practice it. So I think one of the myths people have is, well, I'm not very psychic, so that's it. I just, I'll never get it. That's like saying, well, I'm not very musical or I'm not very athletic. If you look at somebody who's a pro athlete or a pro musician, they have practice and practice and practice and studied and taken lessons, and they maximize their natural ability with a lot of work. And psychic is the same. So if you're looking at on TV and seeing the psychics on TV or pros like me, like I started working when I was 19 years old as a pro, it's just because those people have done a lot of work to polish the gifts they already had. So we all have them and it needs work.
You said you started working as a psychic as a pro since you were 19.
Yeah. It was 1987. It was so long ago.
You must have realized you were psychic as a child.
Yeah. I did. Yeah, I was born in the 60s and I grew up just outside of Boston in, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And back then it was really weird. It was a really weird thing to be psychic. It wasn't really normal. People didn't really talk about it. There was no information about this topic. And so I really kind of had to learn everything the hard way. I went to the library, I read books, searched the bookshelves for things. And fortunately for me, I had like kind of hippie parents who were into meditating and things like that. So they didn't like drag me to the church and throw holy water on me, which happens to some people. But they were like, well, you have a good imagination. That's what I used to hear. So I really had to kind of thrash my way through it, spent a lot of time trying to figure out what was going on, trying to find the off switch, trying to pretend to be normal in public, which was sort of hard for me, honestly. And I would see colors around people. I would see ghosts and angels and other spirits. I would know things. I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would see what I called them when I was little. I called them the gray people, but they were dead people. And they'd hang around they were sad and they wanted to talk. And if I listened, and I was never afraid of them, but if I listened, and was kind of nice to them, they would disappear. They would go away. They would sort of fade out. And I got this like jump start in my sort of funny in my paranormal education by watching horror movies. So when I was 12 years old, I snuck in to see the movie Poltergeist because my parents wouldn't let me see it. So me and my friend, we went in and I was sitting there, and it's like, this movie's like a revelation to me because there's this psychic and she's a professional psychic. And I'm like, in that moment, I'm like, I swore, I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. And I knew then. And then she gives this little paragraph about like what happens when people die and why some people get stuck and what a ghost is and what do you do to release them. And I was like, oh my God, somebody knows something. It began like actually a lifelong love affair of paranormal movie and ghost stories. But I got a lot of my early paranormal education by watching horror movies, which was probably about 50% accurate. And the rest of it was crazy Hollywood nonsense. But then it was the 80s. I was in college and it was the dawn of the new age. Thank God for that. And then I started really like finding teachers. I worked in a new age bookstore and I got trained. And that's when I started working as a pro.
Have you been wanting to ride your broom like you stole it, rather than hiding in the shadows? Theodora Pendragon is here to help your magic shine, whether you want to show the world your subtle sparkle, or you really want to light your fire. Visit Theodora's online store at witchcasting.shop. That's witchcasting.shop. Remember, there's never been a better time to be a witch.
As a child, at what point did you realize that you were different and not everybody saw what you saw?
I mean, I think I knew that kind of right away. Like my very, very first memory is lying in my crib and seeing all these like beautiful, luminous beings standing around my crib. And they were like talking to me and they were blowing kisses at me and they were sending me this energy. And it was so beautiful. And then my mom opens the door and walks into the room and they all disappear. And it was like clear to me that she didn't see them, So it's like, that's my absolute first memory. And I must have been really little because I was in a crib, And I just remember saying to people like, do you see that? Like, do you see that over there? And people would be like, no, that's your imagination, Lisa. Like, that's not really happening. And that's where I kind of had to learn like when to say something and when not to. And mostly I didn't. I kept a lot of my experiences to myself. And back then, like, I mean, sadly still happens today, but back then, if you said you saw angels and talked to dead Uncle Fred, they put you in a mental hospital. Like that was something crazy people did. So I knew even when I was really little to be quiet about it.
That still happens though, because
I know it.
I used to work for a psychiatrist. I was the therapist who the patient saw first. And I remember one time I was with a patient who was telling me about seeing her grandmother walk around, her deceased grandmother walking around the house. And so we were talking about her grandmother. And then when it was time for her to see the psychiatrist, he asked me, how she's doing, if there's any psychosis. I said, no, but she's really enjoying seeing her grandmother in the house. And I said it like it was normal. And he looked at me, he goes, do you need medication too?
I always say there's only a few letters difference between psychic and psychotic, and there really is, and I've worked with a lot of people who struggle with that, or if you have a lot of trauma or you have some mental illness in the back there and you're super psychic, those lines can get a little blurry. And I've found that helping people manage and understand their psychic gifts can really help, to kind of stabilize what's going on. I also feel strongly that doing really, really active psychic development when you're struggling with your mental health, especially if you have a tendency for psychosis, is not a good idea. So if you're in that situation, really concentrating on stabilizing yourself before you open your psychic ability more is very important.
Now, there are people out there listening who say, hey, I want to develop my psychic abilities. What would you recommend that they do to develop that?
There's a couple things we need training. So reading a book is good. I wrote a book called Awakening Your Psychic Abilities. That's a good place to start. It's really kind of a training how-to manual that gives exercises. And we need a few fundamental things like understanding which of your psychic senses are already open. Learning how to turn your psychic abilities on and turn it off. So it's on when you want it on and it's off when you're like roaming about the world. Learn some meditation or tuning in techniques that we need to learn. I really recommend getting a journal. In fact, I published one recently called the Psychic Opening Journal. But you can just go to the store, get a 99-cent composition book. They work just as well, really, and call it your psychic journal, and then start writing down all of your dreams. If you pull cards or do divination, write it down in there. If you have hits, our psychic hits are so ephemeral, and you could have like a psychic insight that's like, so you're like, oh my God, this psychic insight is so incredible. It changes my entire life. It's so meaningful. And then like 2 hours later, you totally forget it.
How many books have you published?
5.
5. Are they all about?
4. And then the 5th one's on its way.
So tell us about the 4 that have published, and then you can tell us a little bit about the one that's coming up.
Sure. The one that I published is called, the first one I did is called The Art of Psychic Reiki. And it's really a guide for Reiki practitioners, as I've been a Reiki teacher for 25 years. I learned Reiki and started teaching in 1999. And I was teaching Reiki and psychic development side by side, and noticed that all my Reiki students were having massive psychic openings, and that I always say that Reiki, yoga, and meditation are the 3 gateways to open your psychic ability. And what happens, people start a Reiki practice, they start meditating, they go to yoga, and all of a sudden their underlying psychic skill abilities are like pop open, and they really need help. And a lot of Reiki teachers don't really know what to do when I heard over and over again from other Reiki people who are like, yeah, I told my Reiki teacher I was having these psychic experiences, and she just told me to stop. She said, don't talk about it or stop doing that. And I was like, what? Like this is a really important skill for healers. It's really a benefit. So I wrote a book about it. My second book is called Energy Healing for Empaths. It's a sweet little book. And that's about to help empaths, sensitives, highly sensitive people understand how to manage their energy, how to protect themselves from energy vampires, and how to have, strengthen their energy field so they can live safely, securely, and happily in the world. My third book is Awakening Your Psychic Abilities. It's a fantastic manual for people who want to increase their psychic abilities. And then the journal is a companion book for that, the Psychic Awakening Journal, which is a prompted journal. It's more like a workbook, really. And then my upcoming book is called The Ultimate Guide to Inner Healing. And it's a card deck and a book that is really made for our healing journey. It's not really an oracle deck. It's more prescriptive, and it's made to help us as healers get more psychic insights about our clients, or if you're on a healing journey yourself, to figure out what's going on and what you need to do. So that's it. Those are my books so far. Publisher just asked me for another one. So they queue up in my head, kind of like airplanes waiting for a landing on a runway, and I have to keep writing them or they just stack up back there.
Would you like to talk about myths and misconceptions about psychic experiences and what they really are?
Yeah, it's such a fantastic topic. We brushed on one of them already, which is like the idea people have that you're just automatically psychic and you don't need to work on it, that there's no way to make yourself be psychic. You can't change that. And that's not true. I think another one is that it's sort of a horrible experience. Like we know what happens to the psychics in horror movies, right? The poor things, it never ends well for them. So I think a lot of people are really afraid of their psychic ability because they're afraid if they open up their psychic ability, they're going to attract negativity to them. All of a sudden, they're going to become like demon infested, tortured souls who attract every negative spirit on the planet. I think of it a lot more like opening your psychic ability, sort of like flipping on a light in a dark room. What happens is you see what's already there. It doesn't make things be there that were never always there. I think there's a lot of trouble we get into when we watch a lot of TV, because they do, as much as and I admit to like loving paranormal TV shows, and I watch them all the time and I love them, and horror movies too. But we don't want to really learn from them like I did, because a lot of what we learn is trouble. Like there are a lot of dangerous, bad practices that people do in those movies to make TV. Good TV is different than good psychic. I think one of those ones that I really wish I could nip in the bud is this idea that I call it the psychic hit and run, that it's okay to jump people with psychic information and tell them without their permission, which we see that happen on TV all the time. But I really think it's quite unethical, and that there needs to be like a much broader acknowledgement of ethics when it comes to our expanding our psychic ability. Just because you can see something or know something about somebody does not give you the right to say it unless you have their permission. So that is really a problem for a lot of people.
If you had some important information that you saw or heard, would you be tempted to warn that person? Say it's something that could prevent a tragedy.
I don't know.
That's a tough question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think as psychics, we really our words plant seeds, and planting good seeds and not bad seeds seems to me like the thing to watch out for. The best psychic on their best day is only ever 80% accurate. So this idea that we absolutely know the truth, we don't. We see probabilities, possibilities. There's no absolute truths here. But if you're wrong and you say something that then plants the idea, you know how easy it is for us to manifest reality with our ideas, right? So I've done a lot of cleanup work from people who have been to bad psychics who've told them shit that is not very good for them to know. Like, oh, your husband's having an affair. Well, that person was wrong actually. And that nearly cost this couple a divorce because the woman in the couple just believed it. And the poor man, who wasn't in fact having an affair, couldn't change her mind, or the person who was like, well, this one was the worst. You have cancer and the doctors will never find it. What a mind screw, right?
Right.
This poor woman came to me and she's like, but the doctors keep telling me okay, but I don't believe it because the psychic told me they'd never find it. And you know how it is. Like, if you think you've got cancer, well, strong enough, doesn't your body have a good chance of like, well, okay, well, I guess we've got cancer now. We'll make some cancer for you,
Right.
Like, I was like, whoa, like, no. So this is what I mean. We have to be so careful about what we say. And as psychics, people really believe us a lot of times. So I generally don't say that kind of stuff. I don't want to go down those roads. I want to plant good seeds. And if there are problems, nobody ever comes to my office because they're having a good day, quite frankly. So all I'm ever working with is people's issues and problems, but we're going to find sort of ways to solve those problems or go into the healing aspect. I was also trained as a therapist. So when I started working as a psychic at 19, I very quickly learned I didn't have enough skills. I didn't know what to do. And I was called on to be, actually a healer. And I was like, what? And people would cry and I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, yeah, cause, it's 19. So I went back to school and, finished like therapy training and became a therapist. And so for years I combined psychic reading with counseling. And so I'm much more apt to take that path than, you'll meet a tall, dark stranger or you have a curse. Let's take that out. Like, like all the crazy things psychic tell us. So we just have to be very, very careful about how we address these situations. The worst I'll ever tell you and I'm a pretty good medical intuitive actually. And I know just between you and me and the fence post, if I tell you to go see the doctor, you should really go. I'm not going to say what I'll just be like, have you been feeling well? Have you been to a doctor lately? Like you look a little run down. Maybe you should get a checkup. I'll say that kind of thing, but that's where I really draw the line at predicting doom and gloom.
I think that was an important message about psychics aren't 100% accurate.
No.
And I think that's important to know because I know people who've gone to psychics and one thing may not have come true, but all the other things have. No, I'm not going back to her again because she told me something that didn't happen.
Yes. So I really think we live in a free will universe over here. So we have psychics a little bit like predicting the weather. You know what I mean? Like you can stick your head out the window and get a really good idea of what the weather's going on right now. And the farther off we go into the future, the harder it is to predict accurately. The psychic could say, that's why I always couch things in terms of probabilities. So I'll say like 82.5% probability it's going to happen this way. And that's about the highest it ever gets, by the way, for me. And you could walk out the door and choose another option. You could choose that other 20% because you have free will and it's your choice. And all the people around you do as well. I think there's very little that's set in stone, actually. That's another myth. People are like, it's all meant to be. It's all already decided. I would say 100% no, that is not true. I don't think that is not how I observe the universe unfolding. Or I think there are certain points in our journey that are kind of predetermined, our contracts, if you will, that our soul decided before we got here. But a lot of it is up for grabs. There's a lot of chaos in the world. There's a lot of randomness down here. It's a free will universe. What would be the point of living in a free will dimension if everything was already predetermined? The point of being here on this planet is we have this, it's a polarized planet. So dimension. So we have this and that. And then we choose, we have free will, we choose. We have this physicality where we can experience the results of our choices. And that's how we learn. So what would be the point of having everything all predetermined? And that's why 100% psychic accuracy is never possible. Just like 100% weather accuracy isn't possible. That was a good rant. How'd you like that?
It was pretty good. So as far as things being predetermined, there are some people who are of the belief that the day we die is predetermined. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's kind of a choice point there. Also, like I think that's sort of between your soul and divine source, between you and God, and we know when somebody dies at their appointed time. We just do. We feel it. And so we say, oh, it was his time. It was their time. And we feel a little more peaceful about it when that happens. And we always know, because we live in this random, chaotic world, sometimes crazy stuff happens and we die outside of our appointed time. And that can be the result of our own choices. Like you drink 5 martinis and then drive on the snowy, curvy mountain road home. You might die outside your, time frame. That's the result of our choices. And when that happens, it's sort of jarring to the rest of us. It's jarring to the soul that crossed over. I think this is why sometimes we have ghosts, why people don't fully cross over. If you die outside your timeline, it's really difficult to process that for everybody.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. So that's sort of a complex answer to your question. Yes, I think we do. Is it the actual day? I don't know. I don't know if you're a mother, but I have 3 kids and, it's like pregnancy. Like you kind of know when your due date is, right? You have a general idea, sort of, but anything can happen, right? lots of crazy stuff can happen that kind of interrupts that. We've kind of the general sense of that. I think that is the same. We have this sort of general kind of time when that can, but it might be a day or two early or 2 weeks late, or because the doctor screwed up something, or I don't know, like variables that can impact that precise moment.
What are spirit guides and how do we all have them?
Thankfully, we all have them because it's really hard to be down here on planet Earth. It's such a challenging place to incarnate. And I don't think that, we'd make it if we didn't have spirit guides. So spirit guides are non-physical, helpful, benevolent, spiritual beings that come here to assist us in our incarnation and our Earth journey. And they can be made up of all different kinds. Everyone has a team. Everyone's team is unique. Everyone's team can change over time. And they are everything from your ancestor spirits who have gone before you, your soul family, your other soulmates who are not on the planet at the moment, angels, masters, prophets, and saints, divine beings, beings of pure consciousness, power animals, shamanic guides. I mean, there's just many, many different types. And they have functions and jobs and ways that they help us and support us. One of the myths that we have around this is that so they can't save you, fix you. I mean, sometimes they do actually save us, but their job isn't to protect you from the results of your own choices, because you wouldn't learn that way. They're here to show us the way, give us hints or clues, but they're not here to do it for you.
How do they communicate with us?
Through our intuition or through our psychic abilities, through signs and omens, through dreams, through divination cards. If we're paying attention, the world is full of signs and omens, messages that we get. And a lot of times what happens is we get kind of a psychic hit. Like, oh, I really should not forget my umbrella today, or I really should take the back road, or I really should divorce this person, or whatever it is, we get the hit. And then we get signs and omens that confirm that. You know what I mean? Like maybe you have a dream about Uncle Fred who died, and you're like, oh, Uncle Fred. And then you wake up in the morning and you find those heart-shaped rocks that you always find when you know Uncle Fred's around. And you walk out of your house and there's a heart-shaped rock right on your front porch that wasn't there, the day before. And you're like, oh, now I know that dream I had from Uncle Fred was real because I got that sign from him, So a lot of times it's sort of through whatever our open channels are, wherever we allow the communication to come in is often how it happens.
There are people who are scared of psychics and scared of their abilities. What can we do to overcome these fears?
I think so many people are afraid of their abilities. And when I teach psychic development classes, the first thing we do is talk about fear because it's so prevalent that we have to kind of clear it up and get it out of the way before people can really relax and start learning. I think that it comes down a lot to those myths and misconceptions. We're afraid we're going to go crazy. We're afraid other people are going to think we're crazy. We're afraid people will ridicule us or humiliate us or shame us or disbelieve us. We're afraid we'll be persecuted or it will attract negativity to us. We already talked about that a little bit. And we're afraid we're just going to see more bad things. And I think so many very psychic people had difficult experiences when they were kids, when they were little, and then we shut it down if we're unsupported, and it's difficult when we're little. So there's a lot we have to work through in order to feel okay about it. It also depends on sort of our faith tradition and how we were raised, what our culture and religious training is. There are religions that think it's the devil, and people will, depending on where you're from, say that's, you can't do that. You can't be that way. Right. And so we, as psychics and sensitives who want to increase it, we have to work through those fears. And other people can be quite afraid too, for all the same reasons. I think most people are afraid, oh, you're going to tell what I'm thinking. You're going to see something I don't want you to see. You're going to see through my defenses, my shielding, and know something about me that I don't want you to know. which honestly I found just almost as true as a therapist. I tell people, you tell people you're a therapist and they're like, don't look at me, don't therapize me. And I'm like, if you feel like paying my session fee, I'm happy to. But if you're not doing that, I don't want to bother looking, and it's really the same.
You're trying to analyze me.
Right, exactly. And I think being psychic is like that times 10. You know what I mean? It's like, I've heard all the jokes, all of the fears people have, like, tell me what color underwear I'm wearing, or just give me the lottery numbers. That's all I want to know.
Okay, so what would you say to someone who asks a question like, well, why haven't you hit the lottery if you're psychic?
I say that I actually have a couple of times, first of all.
Oh, okay.
And,
I backtracked that question.
Yeah, and I mean, nothing to, write home about, but basically I feel like these gifts are of divine purpose and they're meant to help other people, basically. Not that we don't use them for ourselves, because we do, but they're really part of our spiritual toolkit. And unless it's like on your ticket to win the lottery, that's not really going to happen. I think they're more useful when you're like navigating through life and you need help, which we all do, because it's kind of crazy out there, right? So many people, I think the pandemic was so interesting with this because it disrupted our pattern, our routines so profoundly that so many more people were relying on their intuition to help guide them through that really difficult time and the continuing difficulties that we've had since then. That's what it's for. It's for helping you navigate your own life. It's for helping you live a more soulful life. It's for helping you help other people. And I guess if, winning the lottery is part of that, then that will happen, but it's not really what it's about.
You mentioned that you have students and you train people. What kind of classes do you offer?
I have all kinds of training online. All my classes are online now, from the beginner to the advanced, intermediate, advanced, and I even have a year-long apprenticeship program to help people go pro. So if you want to quit your soul-sucking, boring day job and become a professional psychic healer, I got you. I have a year-long program that will help you get everything you need to do that.
That's exciting. So what's your website where people can find you to sign up?
It's lisacampion.com. You can find everything there. I hope you stop by and leave me a message or send me an email. If you have questions on how I can help you, let me know. And you can find me in all the standard social media outlets, and all my books are available on Amazon and also on Audible. They're all available as audiobooks as well.
I'm going to add all your links in the episode notes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Psychics have senses, right? Psychic senses, which are known as the clairs. What are your clairs?
My primary is a visual, so I'm a visual psychic. It's the most rare. It's the most challenging. It's the most difficult. It's one of those myths. People think they're not psychic if they don't see anything. So a lot of times when I'm training people, they're like, I'm not psychic. I don't see anything. But we actually have all these other psychic senses. And if we change that word see to perceive or experience, what are you experiencing? What are you perceiving? It opens us to the other psychic senses. The sense of hearing, which is called clairaudience, knowing, feeling, feeling things in our body, even taste and smell, feeling things with your heart. Like our hearts are quite psychic as well. We have a whole array. I think there's about 7 or 8 psychic senses actually. And so seeing is only one of those. And I really love people, and it's the most challenging, I feel, and they're most rare in a way. So I really want people to learn to expand their definition of their psychic senses, to tune into all of the possible ways they could be perceiving information.
And what are those ways to perceive information?
Well, we feel things in our body. That's called clairsomatic. And that's one of my favorite. I think it's one of the most powerful things. And that's when you feel your tummy flip, or you get goose flesh on your skin. Our skin is incredibly sensitive organ. It's sensitive to vibrations, and our skin, you ever, felt your skin crawl when you're around somebody, or you get happy shivers, right? Maybe you feel a rush of energy up and down your spine. Maybe you cry truth tears. Some people cry when they get it, or their eyes water. We all have a physical sense that we experience when we're getting a psychic download. It's so cool. And your body's psychic sense is so solid. It never lies. It always knows what's really going on. It's rock solid. And kind of underlooked and underappreciated, I think. Then we have the feeling sense, which is I have a good or bad feeling about something. And that is often connected with our emotions. So if you're an empath, this feeling sense is probably going to be your strongest. And, feeling empath starts like your superpower is feeling your way through things. Also difficult because our world doesn't really value feelings very much. So you can say, I don't have a good feeling about that. And people are like, poo poo, they just brush that off. But that's unfortunate because it's really accurate. Then there's the knowing sense, claircognizance. I don't know why I know. I just know, and it's that gut knowing, and often sort of argues with your mind. Your mind can come in and sort of argue with that, but we know which is always right? Your mind will screw with you, lie to you, can barely see what's really going on. Your poor mind. It's good at other things, but no, it's not very psychic. So it's not good at knowing. Then our heart feels things like our hearts are very psychic, and your heart is very dialed into what's happening in the relationships. Your heart is the part of you that can read the room, like feel everything, all the subtle metatext of everything that's going on interpersonally, like, ooh, awkward, or, ooh, those two are vibing over there. Like your heart is constantly feeling the vibrations between people. Then your ears, your voice and your ears, that's clairaudience, and they're connected. So we hear, and mostly especially with hearing and visual, sometimes we hear things with our real ear, but mostly we're hearing it with our psychic ear. So it's like hearing a voice inside your own head that isn't you, a lot of times, a clairaudience hear ringing or buzzing in their ears, or hear voices talking inside white noise. If you've ever had a fan or an air conditioner and you're like playing and you're like, well, is there music going on? Did somebody call my name? Like we hear things, right? And then there's the visual psychic, where again, for me, it's like seeing a movie inside my head. When I was a kid, I used to see things with my real eyes, and I really don't like that. I find it uncomfortable. So I'm seeing things like a daydream, or like it's happening in my interior vision. And then we have sort of this cosmic knowing, like this extreme connection to cosmos, to divine energy. And you might feel like the top of your scalp tingling. And that's where we're really receiving direct messages from our spirit guides through there. So everyone has a bunch of those, and you will have some that are really naturally strong already. And then if you work on practicing them, you can strengthen the other ones. This takes practice.
So we can practice with you. We just check out your website and sign up for a class.
You bet. I think what we need is a combination of knowledge. So we need to know the things we need to know. We need practice with other people. We need a mentor or teacher who can show us the way. We need community. And those are the kinds of things that I offer in my classes.
You also have a podcast, and you are a host of a radio show.
Well, yeah, the podcast and radio show are called The Miracle of Healing. They're on mindbodyspirit.fm. They're really fun. I've been doing it for, a bunch of years now. And I talk about spiritual topics. We talk about healing, spiritual stuff and psychic stuff. So check it out. You can find it anywhere podcasts are, or on mindbodyspirit.fm.
Thank you for that. Do you have a takeaway for the listeners today about anything we discussed or something we haven't even touched on?
Yeah, I'd really love everyone to consider starting that psychic journal, and just take some time every day to find some quiet time to tune in, because if we're going to sharpen our psychic senses and receive some psychic information, we really need to take time out of the busyness of our day. Go for a walk, go for a drive. Here's a really fun psychic activity. We're the most psychic when we're in alpha state, which is a light meditative trance. And we get there often when we're doing like repetitive tasks with our hands, washing the dishes, folding the laundry, driving, walking, in the shower. Some of the psychics get their best hits when they're in the shower, me included. So ask yourself a question that you want to know an answer to, and then go do one of those activities. Mow the lawn, fold the laundry, wash the dishes, and forget about it. Just kind of like space out a little bit and let your mind shift out of the conscious beta brainwave into the alpha brainwave. And if you relax into it enough, into your beingness will pop the answer. Maybe you know it, feel it, sense it, hear it, see it, smell it, taste it, all of those. You then write it down in your psychic journal so you don't forget it. And that's a really cool, very accurate, very easy, works for everyone. Never met someone who couldn't do it. Way to get psychic and really accurate, useful psychic information.
And your book, Awaken Your Psychic Ability, also has a companion journal.
Yes, that journal is the psychic opening journal. It's a really good little workbook that goes with it. So you get some practice exercises. It's a kind of a combination of a journal and a workbook. And I think that's where a good place to get practice. Go through the exercises, practice them, and record them in there.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, Lisa, for being on the show.
Oh, it was so fun. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I look forward to having you on mine too.
Thank you for joining us for Witchcasting with Theodora Pendragon. Have a burning question or have a topic you'd love Theodora and her guests to discuss on the show? Contact her through Instagram at Theodora Pendragon. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And help us spread the word by leaving us a rating and review and sharing it with your friends. See you next time, and may your magic always shine.